Are you listening?
Clockwork Origins is an independent developer based out of Germany. This studio has been responsible for the tower defense games Elemental War 1 and 2, the turn-based RPG Red Skies, along with the endless racer Tri-6 Infinite. Founded back in 2018, Clockwork Origins actually got their start 13 years earlier by creating mods for GOTHIC 2. And now, the studio is embracing the future of gaming by porting its library to Google's cloud gaming platform Stadia. And in this interview, we dive into the studio's challenges and benefits with embracing the cloud, along with what future titles Clockwork Origins has planned for gamers. So, welcome to the Nerf Report, Daniel Bonroth.
Hi Brian, thanks for inviting me.
I guess we can kind of just pull back the curtain a little bit. This is our second time recording this, everyone. I forgot to hit the record button, so apologies, and we'll jump right back into the conversation. I played your game Elemental War 2, and I genuinely mean this. It was a fantastic game, and I think that the thing that surprised me a lot about it was the actual depth, and just how much there was to do in a tower defense game.
Yeah, the inspiration for Elemental War 1 already comes from the Warcraft 3 mod Element TD. Maybe you also know that. I'm not sure. There's also a standalone version nowadays. So the basic gameplay comes from there, but I didn't want to just do some copy. So I also added elements from other games I liked, especially roguelike games. I play them a lot, actually. And Binding of Isaac was around the time when I started development of Elemental War. And so I had this idea to put the random item mechanic into a tower defense. So you get an item every 5 waves, actually. So whenever you beat an elemental, and to add some variety, each run feels different because you get different items. A problem with that was obviously that it's a little complex to start with. So you are a little overwhelmed, and at the moment we are pretty bad at doing tutorials.
Yeah, but even though there's no tutorial kind of in the front, I mean, we touched on it earlier, but it's one of those that it's that experience of learning. You play around, you learn something new, you go in, you go a little further, you go in, learn more, and eventually towards the end you get that experience. And I kind of dug like that. One of the things that I learned on was the buff zones. I think that's what they're called, where if you put a fire element here, it does double damage. I was like, man, that's killer. And when I discovered that, I was just like, oh my god, this changes everything. But I think one of my favorite things, especially for it, was kind of zooming in on all the creatures and elementals and monsters. Did you design those, or how did you create all these creatures, if you will?
The monsters actually are from the Unity Asset Store. So we didn't create them, we just adjusted them so it fits together. Also, most of the graphical assets, so trees and stuff like that, are from the store. So we combined everything, we created the levels out of it, we added some custom models here and there. The towers are completely from our team.
And I apologize for not knowing this, but when it comes to Unity items like that, is that a license fee that when you buy into Unity, you get access to all those assets and all those images?
No. So there are a few free assets I think you get when you are in their subscription tiers. But in general, you have to buy the stuff from the store you want. It's not like for Unreal, I think you get a lot of free stuff when using the engine. But for Unity, I don't know of any bigger things, at least.
Now, your studio, Clockwork Origins, it feels like you guys have done a little bit of everything. I checked your website. You've got tower defense games with Elemental War 1 and 2. You've got a turn-based RPG with Red Skies, and then you've got an endless racer with Tri-6 Infinite. Tell me a little bit about your studio. What inspired you to make these games, and what made you get into game development?
Yeah, well, our history started in 2004 when I kind of was starting with my modding experience. So I played a Gothic 1 mod actually back then and thought, wow, that's cool. That was a small team that created a completely new experience based on a game I liked. So I decided to learn it myself. And 2005, I founded my own mod team to create a big RPG that also finally got released in 2017. So 12 years after I started work on it. But it's a really big project, so you can play it like 200 hours to see everything. So yeah, took a while.
That's awesome. From like that perspective, I mean, that's got to feel really awesome. You know, you're working on something for 12 years and you finally release it to the public. What's that like for you? I mean, are you nervous? Are you scared? Or are you excited? Are you exhausted? What's going through your mind?
Well, for this project, I actually was just happy to finally have it released, because in the time between 2012 to 2017, I was mostly alone in the team, because everyone else, it was a mod team, so only unpaid helpers, and most of them quit them randomly. So you are left with maybe uncompleted work. And yeah, I wasn't active in the modding scene there as well, because I focused already on learning proper game development, so the C++ side and everything, programming and other stuff. So there I just sat down, said, yeah, okay, I'm finishing it. I'm integrating the last quests we had, fixing the last bugs, and getting it out. So it's done.
I love talking to developers about that, because you know, when we're in content creation here on YouTube, when we release a video, it's an awkward moment where it's like, do I want to read the comments? Do I not want to read the comments? Do I want to know what people are saying? And I always find it interesting, especially for a project like 12 years. Yeah. Do you hang out in the forums? Do you talk to people who are playing your game, or do you just kind of go on vacation for a little bit?
Yeah, for the mod project, I actually put all the support work and so also to some community helpers. And for our games, I try to read the comments, but yeah, so I'm really excited always and don't know what to expect. Do the people like it? Do we get some shitstorm, whatever? And most of the time, I let my co-founder Sebastian check the reviews first before I read them, so I don't get depressed by negative feedback.
I'm in the exact same boat. There's some days that I hand my phone to my wife and I'm like, can you read the comments before I go in there and just prep me for anything? One thing I thought was really cool, and it kind of stood out to me on your guys' website, was that it says that no game is released until it has 100% met your expectations. An awesome stance to have. What kind of led you guys to having that be kind of your plan as developers? Yeah,
it's important for us to not deliver something we don't like ourselves. I mean, sure, we still get feedback after launch. There are bugs, there are things people don't like, but we are a very small team. Most of the time I'm working alone on the projects. From the internal side, we have an awesome graphics artist who works together with me on the graphical side of things. Yeah, but I don't want to play games from others that don't feel finished. So I want to release games that I think are good enough for the market, that I'm satisfied with.
The other thing that I noticed was that for the most part, you guys are self-published, correct?
Yes.
I mean, that's got to be a completely different challenge on its own. I mean, can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, that's one of our biggest problems, so to say, the whole marketing thing. When you have a publisher who has connections and everything, it's a lot easier to get some visibility on the stores or general for computer magazines or whatever. When self-publishing, you have to do everything yourself. And I have to do most of it, and I'm pretty bad at it, or don't know how to do it. So that's something I'm still learning over all the years. And yeah, we slightly get better there. And also it's, of course, harder to get on all the platforms you want to be on. So when you have a publisher who's already in contact with Stadia, Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, then they just say, okay, port your game to the platform, we will take care of the launch. We had to apply on each of these platforms ourselves, write some formulas or forms, and advertise ourselves. For Elemental War, which was our first game, we had to advertise ourselves with no game released yet, which is also tricky. Yeah, so it's not like we are safe there. I mean, for Sony and Nintendo and also Stadia, we can release new games now that we are partners, but especially for Microsoft, which is our best-selling platform at the moment, we have to pitch them every new game again. So It could be that our next game can't launch on Xbox because they just reject it. For example, they did that for Tri-Six Infinite, which was not so great for us. Still don't know the reason, but yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, and it's a side of the video game industry and gaming development that I don't think that the casual gamer or even the diehard gamer get to see, because for a lot of the indie studios out there like yourself, you're working on polishing the game, making sure it's the best game possible. But then you also have to kind of be an expert in social media and self-promoting, and it's tough to kind of self-publish. One of them that I thought was really interesting this year was Hypercharged Unboxed, which I don't know if you saw any of it, but it's like a first-person shooter where it's these action figure toys playing in a toy store. And that developer posted his video on TikTok about December of last year, and then it just blew up, and that sold his game. And it's cool on one hand that like a developer can kind of take their own fate, throw it on TikTok, make a really cool marketing campaign, and not need a publisher. But at the same time, it's also just like, man, when you're self-publishing your game, you not only have to be the developer, you have to be the salesman, you have to be the marketing, you have to be quality assurance. You have to do all of that along with maintaining the relationships with all the platforms. It's crazy. Now, as I mentioned, we jumped into Elemental War 2 on Stadia, and that game does have some unique Stadia features, most specifically the crowd choice, where I can be streaming the game to YouTube. People in the audience can actually tell me or vote on what the next monster elemental is going to be and kind of impact my gameplay. How has that changed development for you, having a feature like that?
Well, for Elemental War 2, it was, added on top of the game we already had at that point. So it was added pretty late. So we didn't design the game around any streaming features, so to say. So there was no really deep integration into gameplay. For our next game, and I won't tell that much about it, but you can expect more streamer integration there. So the plan is, and it's already integrated in a form of prototype, we still have to test it, but there you can even play with or against your chat.
Now, I know there's probably a lot you don't want to talk about, but do you have like a release window for kind of when you're shooting 2023, 2024, or are we talking 2025?
2023.
2023, okay, very cool. Well, I'm excited to see it, but luckily, people who are fans of yours don't have to wait much longer, as you also have another game that's coming out very soon in the form of Tri-Six Infinite, correct?
That's correct, yeah. We decided to port Tri-Six Infinite to Stadia, and it's going to be released next week.
Yeah, I am. I'm very excited to try this out. I've always been a fan of endless racers, and it just has such a cool futuristic look to it. I don't know if you ever got to play like Destiny 2 Sparrow Racing when that came out, but it reminded me so much of that mechanic that they have. It's like a seasonal event, but like it's a mechanic that I miss. And I'm really looking forward to kind of jumping into that kind of style of gameplay with it. So for people who aren't aware, Endless Racer, you're on these bikes, and I understand that's a very kind of surface level description. So do you mind explaining to everybody what Tri-Six Infinite is?
Tri-Six Infinite is, as you said, an endless racer in cyberspace. So it's inspired by Tron. That's, by the way, where the TR in the name comes from the Tri-Six. The I6 comes from the engine it was developed for. I6 stands for Institute 6. That was at the university where I had some practical. So, it's an endless racer. So you drive one of three vehicles. You start with Hermes, that's the most balanced vehicle. There's also Hyperion, which is like a bike, or it is a bike, and Helios, which is like, internally we call it Speeder, like in Star Wars for the pod racing. So it's bigger and harder to surpass obstacles. Then you drive different tracks, So you start always on the same one, but then some random algorithm will decide where you end up. So there are 6 track variations, I think. And on the track, there are different obstacles. They get randomly distributed there and get harder each lap you drive. And on top, you get faster. So it will be harder to survive. And then there are also virus enemies. So we are in cyberspace, in the PC or in the internet. There, of course, are computer viruses. And they are trying to stop you and defeat you. And to do so, you and the viruses can collect power-ups like in Mario Kart. So there are several different ones like mines, speed power-ups, missiles, also some fake power-up. So like the fake power-up in Mario Kart. All these power-ups can be used by the player and also by the bots.
Now, as I understand it, with it being an endless racer, for the most part, it's just going to be like a solo experience, and then really the only multiplayer might be like a leaderboard that whoever gets the best time. Is that correct?
It's basically designed a single-player game with the goal to get good scores in the leaderboards, but you can also play it in a local multiplayer split screen together with up to 3 friends.
You mentioned porting, and I was kind of hoping we could dive into that because Stadia has kind of been an interesting platform when it comes to porting. Some developers, especially on the indie side, have kind of been embracing it. How has your experience been bringing your games like Elemental War 2 and Tri-6 to a platform like Stadia?
Well, it's actually easier than I expected before. We have a lot of experience in porting to consoles now because we ported all our games to all possible consoles so far. Stadia had this special experience because it's streaming, and especially for Tri-6 Infinite, I was curious if it will work because it becomes pretty fast-paced the more you progress, and due to some input lag you have with the streaming or the streaming lag in general, I feared that it might be too hard to play. So that was one thing I was curious about. From the technical side, the porting itself, when using Unity, at least that's the only one I can speak for, was rather easy. So you just select another build target, say export, and it's done. Then of course you have to integrate the SDK for Stadia, which is mostly straightforward work when having done it for Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, whatever. So yeah, that's no big deal. My biggest pain point always are the certification requirements each platform has. And especially here, Stadia is pretty nitpicky. On other platforms, it doesn't really matter, for example, if you have a constant 60 FPS, but Stadia really has some frame rate stability calculator. So only, I don't know the exact numbers, but 95% of the frames have to be in the 60 FPS range, or 58 to 62 or something like that. When you don't have control over the engine you use, and there is some loading in the background you can't control, then it's hard. For example, in Tri-6 Infinite, when opening the main menu, for some reason the frame rate drops pretty hard for a while, and so far I haven't found a way to solve this issue. But the actual gameplay, so while not opening the menu, runs fine at 60 FPS and 4K. So
now, when you're submitting it for certification, is that like, I mean, Google's got so much technology on their end. Is that an automated test that they do, or is there actually someone manually reviewing your game on that end?
Oh, they are doing it manually. So they have a huge list of requirements, and they are actually playing the game and even reporting normal bugs. So not only the stuff they find for their requirements, but also if some game mode doesn't work or whatever.
That's impressive. Now, the other big conversation around Stadia porting has been their topic of like load change porting, where essentially like it makes it easier for you to bring the game to your platform. Have you had any experience with that on your end, or has Stadia approached you on that?
Actually, not so far. So we did native Linux versions for Stadia.
Now, we talked about Tri-6 coming. Your blog was kind of hinting Also at the fact that maybe the original Elemental War would be coming to Stadia as well. Is that confirmed?
Yes.
Okay. Is that going to be the same release date as Tri 6, if possibly next week?
No. We focused on Tri 6 Infinite for now. We also have a new Elemental War 2 update featuring new game modes. And then we have our new game and the game after that we are currently working on. So I was pretty busy, so I delayed Elemental War 1 for a while now. Yeah, we got some feedback from pre-certification, so they did some first checks, and I still have to solve some of these issues. And yeah, but I think it will come later this year.
I guess the final question I have for you for Stadia-related content is Stadia as a platform has kind of embraced that subscription service as well, similar to Xbox. Like Xbox has their Game Pass, Stadia has Stadia Pro. When launching your game, is there a conversation that you have internally at Clockwork of, hey, should we go subscription at launch or should we launch just traditionally? Is there a benefit to either of those for you in your opinion?
That's really hard to tell because I have no first-hand experience with the subscription models, neither with Game Pass nor with Stadia Pro. Before the launch of Elemental War 2, we talked internally about it, if it makes sense for us. Without any data, we weren't sure. And yeah, we got an offer for Stadia Pro 2 weeks before launch back then, which was too short-handed to change our release date and everything, because there are contracts with other platforms and you aren't allowed to launch on one platform earlier than on the others. Yeah, that was a little bad luck back then. Mm-hmm. But actually, I think all of our games at the moment would fit a subscription service, because what you want in a subscription is to have games that you can play forever. And all our games are score-based, and you can replay them and get a better score or just get another experience in the Elemental War games through new items or whatever. And yeah, it would be nice. And maybe our future games or future Stadia releases might be in Pro.
Well, I mean, it's definitely an interesting perspective when it comes to kind of like day and date on a subscription service. And I've always been fascinated by it. So perhaps if you do decide to go down that route, we'll have to follow up and have another conversation about that to kind of figure out how your experience has been. But if someone in the meantime wants to find out more about Tri 6 Infinite, Elemental War 2, Clockwork Origins, or anything that you are doing, where should they go?
First place to check out is our homepage, clockwork-origins.com. There are all basic informations, and then we have links there for the individual games.
Daniel, I appreciate you so much coming on the show today, and in the future, if there's anything we can do for you, please do not hesitate to reach out. We would be happy to have you on the show again. For everybody else watching at home, thank you so much for watching. My name is Bryant. This has been the Nerf Report, and we'll see you in the next video. See you guys. Hey, thanks again for checking out our channel. If you like what you saw and you want to see more content just like it, which who wouldn't, hit the subscribe button right there. And while you're down there, hit the like button. Maybe even consider becoming a Nerf Report best friend, just like the people listed down below did. In fact, don't you want to see your name there? I know I do.